Hello everyone. Today we're going to discuss about this topic called 10 soft skills you need. This entire module we will do in two sections. In the first set of section, I will talk to you about the 5 soft skills that you need, and in the second one I'll talk about the other 5 soft skills that you need. To start with, having the technical skills and knowledge to successfully execute your job duties is only one part of being the best you can be in the workplace. In addition to these hard skills, we also need soft skills. Soft skills are those skills which allow us to effectively work with others. No matter what your position, organization, or industry, you work with people. Taking the time to build effective soft skills can contribute to a more efficient, more harmonious, and more productive workplace, as well as to your own overall job happiness and satisfaction. Soft skills are the personal attributes that allow us to effectively relate to others. These skills enhance our personal interactions and lead to greater job performance and satisfaction. Unlike hard skills, which are the technical and knowledge skill sets we bring to our work, soft skills are interpersonal and can be applied in a broad array of situations. Soft skills encompasses both personality traits such as optimism and ability which can be practiced, such as empathy. Like all skills, soft skills can be learned. Soft skills are personal attributes that allow us to effectively relate to others. Applying these skills help us build stronger work relationships, work more productively, and maximize our career prospects. Often, we place the focus of our career development efforts on hard skills, technology skills, knowledge, and other skills that specifically relate to our ability to get work-related tasks done. This means we neglect to develop our soft skills. However, soft skills are directly transferable to any job, organization, or industry. As a result, they are an investment worth making. As said earlier, we will discuss about the 10 soft skills you need to survive and grow. The first one is empathy and the emotional intelligence quotient. Empathy is perhaps the most important soft skills we can develop for better interpersonal interactions. Empathy is the ability to identify with other person's experience. While we often think of empathy in terms only of identifying with someone's pain or negative experience, we can apply empathy in a variety of situations. Developing empathy allows us to imagine ourselves in another person's shoes, to respond to others, and even to voraciously experience others' feelings of emotions. When we demonstrate empathy, we create connections with others, which can help to build teamwork or otherwise create shared goals. Empathy also helps to forge stronger interpersonal connections between team members and colleagues, which is as important as shared goals or complementary skills when it comes to accomplishing works. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and manage our feelings so that they are expressed appropriately. Exercising emotional intelligence helps to create harmonious productive relationships. There are 4 key components to emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness, the ability to recognize our own feelings and motivations. The second one is self-management, the ability to appropriate, express or not express feelings. The third one is social awareness, our ability to recognize the feelings and needs of others and the norms of a given situation. And the fourth one is relationship management, our ability to relate effectively to others. Taken together, these skills make up our emotional intelligence quotient. The emotional intelligence quotient is a measure of your ability to exercise soft skills such as empathy. The second soft skill which I was talking about is Communication. Communication is the most important soft skill because all other soft skills are built on the ability to communicate clearly and professionally. Communication is more than just sending a message. It is also the ability to receive messages, listen actively, and hear what isn't being said. Many times, we focus on learning to speak or write clearly, but this is only one component of communications and perhaps not even the most important. Human communication is complex. The first thing that comes to mind when we hear the word communication is often words, either spoken or written. But the words we speak and hear are just one way we communicate, and some studies show that most of our communication takes place through other means. Humans communicate in many different ways. Studies show that up to 70% of the information we communicate comes through non-verbal communication. Gestures, eye contact, postures, personal space, and all the other ways we use our bodies to send message. Other studies show that if a person's non-verbal communication and verbal communication don't match in terms of message, the listener is more likely to doubt what he or she is saying. Improving your non-verbal communication can help improve your overall ability to both send and receive messages. Improving your non-verbal communication starts with awareness. Pay attention to how you use your body when you are talking or listening to someone. An open stance, frequent but not continuous eye contact, nods, and a relaxed posture helps to communicate that you are open and approachable and that you are communicating honestly. A closed stance, folding your arms across your chest, staring at the floor, or refusing to make eye contact all indicates that you are not listening or that you are not communicating openly. Shifting from foot to foot, pacing, or otherwise moving continuously indicates impatience. We do many things without thinking about them, especially when we are otherwise busy. Take time to notice both your own nonverbal communication and others, and especially your reaction to others. Listening is also an important part of communication. The ability to receive message is as important, if not more important, than the ability to send them. Listening is more than just hearing the words someone speak. It is a total way of receiving verbal and non-verbal messages, processing them, and communicating that understanding back to the speaker. Many of us listen in order to respond. We are formulating our next message while other is still talking. We should instead listen to understand, to fully take in, process, and comprehend the message that is being sent. Active listening is sometimes thrown around as a buzzword, but it's a valuable soft skill to develop. Active listening is a form of listening where you listen to the speaker and reflect back what you understood the speaker to have said. You may also give the speaker non-verbal feedback through your nods of agreements or other techniques which indicates your listening and understanding. Active listening involves staying focused on the present, both by giving the speaker your full attention and by keeping the discussion to the issue at hand. Reflect back to the speaker what you understand him or her to have said by carefully rephrasing the message, such as, "So here you saying that." We check for understanding and use I statement rather than you statements here. The next bit in communication is openness and honesty. Open and honest communication is the key to build workplace relationships and demonstrate professionalism. While you do not need to discuss personal or private topics in the workplace, being transparent and honest about work matters and generally being willing to communicate with others is vital. People can sense when someone is hiding something or withholding information. and tend not to trust him or her. This damages workplace trust and relationship and may lead to lower productivity and morale. Each of us has a different level of comfort with what we choose to disclose about ourselves. But being willing to share parts of yourself with your colleagues also helps to build rapport. The third soft skill I was talking about is teamwork. Even if you work fairly independently most of the time, inevitably you must also work with others. Finding ways to build teams that accomplish what needs to be done in the most efficient and accurate manner is often challenging, especially when bringing together team members with diverse sets of hard and soft skills. There are some basic techniques you can use when building or working with a team to help create a cohesive unit that leverages everyone's talents and ensures that each person contributes. Few important things over here is identifying capabilities. Einstein said that everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its life thinking it's stupid. When building a team, it is key to identify the different talents, skills and capabilities each team member brings. Identify what each team member does well and can contribute. It helps ensure that work is allocated in a way that takes full advantage of the talent resources on the team. Assigning a team member work that is completely outside his or her skill set is a recipe for failure. On the other hand, leveraging all the diverse capabilities, skills and talents on your team helps you achieve the maximum results. When you build or join a team, take the time at the outset to ask each member what he or she brings to the team. What skills, abilities and relationships does each team member have that can enhance the project? What does each person feel he or she does well? How can the team use all these talents and capabilities to achieve the best outcome? The next piece is get into your role. When you are given a role on a team, it's important to get into it. Be sure you know what is expected of you and what you can expect of others. Even if the role is new one or a stretch for you, it is the key to step into it. This also means stepping out of others' roles, even if they are roles you have played before. Use your communication skills to create open, honest dialogues with your other team members so that you are all on the same page. Be clear about where your role begins and ends and be willing to assert those boundaries. Teamwork can be challenging in the best of circumstances, but it is even more so when roles are unclear. A key step in creating a team is clearly outlining what each person's role is and what is not. Learn the whole process, which is very, very important. Knowing your role and stepping fully into it is a vital part of effective teamwork. At the same time, it's important not to get isolated in your own piece of the project. Learning the whole process not only ensures that you understand your own role and accountabilities, but helps you know what to expect of from others. When you take the time to learn the whole process, it puts your work and your relationship with team members into a larger context. Knowing the whole process also means that you can help a colleague troubleshoot if problems arise, and that your colleagues can be of assistance should you need it. In the worst case scenario, having every member of the team know the whole process means that others can step in if there is a crisis or a breakdown in the project. The best way to learn the whole process is to talk to team members who are working parts of the project different from your own. Take the time to ask questions and to listen actively to their answers. This is not only demonstrates that you care about the outcomes of the project, but that you are interested and invested in each of your teammates' work and success. Learning the whole process helps to build collaborative relationships among team members, which helps to enhance communication and overall productivity. The next one is the power of flow. Psychologist defines flow as a mental state that occurs when we are fully immersed in an activity. When we are a flow state, we are completely absorbed in what we are doing, and this produces a feeling of energized focus and enjoyment. Tapping into flow is a powerful way to increase your own productivity and the productivity of your teams. We are most likely to achieve flow when we are engaged in the task, which our skills are well matched. Another reason to identify the capabilities of each person on a team. Flow also comes about more easily when we have clear goals and can focus on the process rather than the end product. Perhaps the most important key to achieving flow is to minimize interruptions when you are working. When we can find the flow state, time seems to pass quickly, without our noticing. We are also more likely to create accurate, high quality work and fewer errors. Because we are focused totally on what we are doing, a flow state may be a key aspect of mastering a new set of skills. Stretching your skill set and cultivating flow can be a great tool for professional development. The fourth soft skill which I was talking about is problem solving. No matter what your industry or your role, problem solving is part of your job. Whether the problems you encounter are big or small, you solve problems every day. Learning how to apply problem solving skills helps not only to enhance productivity but also helps to cultivate relationships by focusing on standard goals and solutions. So, few important things of problem solving. Number one is defining the problem. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is. The first step in solving any problem should be to define the problem itself. Oftentimes, when we think is a problem is only a symptom of a larger issue. Take time to define the problem clearly, whether it is an interpersonal conflict or a hitch in a supply line. Figuring out what the problem is exactly and clearly defining means you can move forward with solutions that will actually solve it, rather than just resolve the symptoms or temporarily stop the cures. Taking time to define the problem is especially important if emotions are running high or interactions are getting heated. It puts the focus back on shared goals and allows for everyone to be heard. The second bit is generate alternative solutions. Once you have defined a problem, you can move on to solutions. It is important not to just choose the first solution that presents itself, nor should you push your own preferred solution, the exclusion of others. Instead, take the time to generate alternative solutions. Ask the others involved, what ideas they have for solving the problem. Discuss the ways in which the alternative solution might play out, problems they might encounter, and how any obstacles can be overcome. Apply active listening and clear communication throughout. When the group has generated many solutions, discuss which one you would you'd all like to move forward with. Evaluating the plan is the next step. What your list of alternative solutions generated, it is time to make plans and evaluate them. Give all the alternative solutions equally fair treatment. Ask the group to brainstorm potential benefits to each alternative solutions or plan. Then work with the group to anticipate potential obstacles or problems with each plan. Based on these discussions, evaluate which plan or plan seems to offer the greatest benefit with the fewest drawbacks. Also, consider whether the necessary resources, people, time, material, funding are available for each proposed plan. As the plans are evaluated, it will quickly become clear which are entirely unworkable. Narrow the list until the most workable plans are found. And then the next part is implementation and re-evaluation. Once the most workable plan has been chosen, it is time to implement it. It is important to communicate clearly about how the plan will be implemented, what each person's role will be, and what the goals and expected outcomes are. The other soft skills you are developing, communication and teamwork, are vital here. People must feel as though they are part of the solution if you want them to buy into it. Also provide a timeline for the plan, including the point at which the plan will be re-evaluated. Re-evaluation of a plan is a step that often gets missed. Sometimes what appears to be the most workable plan on paper does not play out, when put into actions. It is important to take the time to reevaluate the plan once it has been implemented, so you can gauge how well it's working. Depending on the results, you may need to make some changes to the plan or implement a new plan altogether. Re-evaluation helps to determine whether the original problem has in fact been solved. The fifth soft skill which I was talking about is time management. We all have the same number of hours in the day, so why is it that some people seems to get so much more done? The ability to effectively manage your time is the key to productivity. You may not be able to create more time in your day, but applying time management skills can help you make the most of the time you do have. Few important things for that. Number one is the art of scheduling. We know that if we want to have a meeting, get a haircut, or see our healthcare provider, we need to make an appointment. We schedule our errands and vacations. But when it comes to our own time and work we do independently, too often we take a piecemeal approach and just do whatever comes to hand first. Taking the time to schedule work tasks, even those you do independently, helps you make better use of your time. Instead of doing work as it comes to you, take the time to slot in a block of time on your schedule for each task. Don't forget to schedule in breaks. It's important. Scheduling tasks makes them a priority. After all, you wouldn't just skip a doctor's appointment or other scheduled obligations. Seeing something on your schedule also helps you remember that it needs to get done. Scheduling can take time, some time to master. You may discover that tasks take much more or much less time than you plan for. Spend a week or so keeping track on how you spend your work time so that you can better plan ahead for how much time to schedule a given task or project. The second important part in time management is prioritizing. Managing your priorities is key to managing your time. Taking the time to determine what is most important, whether in terms of value or in terms of completion, is the first step. Take time each day and week to determine what your priorities for the coming days are. Slot these into your schedule first. This allows you to ensure that time is blocked off and resources allocated for most important tasks and projects. When we don't take time to set priorities, everything becomes equally urgent, which means that we move from task to task in a way that is haphazard and does not make the best use of our time or energy. Setting priorities helps ensure that you take care of these things that are most pressing or which delivers the most value. Prioritizing is especially key when working with others. If people who must work together has differing senses of what the priorities are, this can lead to miscommunication, conflict, and reduction of productivity. The next piece is managing distractions. A major key of productivity, especially if you want to find a flow state, is to manage your distractions. Distractions happen. We can minimize them and manage them, but never eliminate them altogether. Creating a plan for managing distraction is a key time management skills. The first step is to determine what your major distractions are. Is it colleagues popping into your office? Is it your email or voicemail? Or do you get bored with routine tasks if you have to focus on something to do longer? Figuring out what your major distractions can help you brainstorm solutions and better manage them. Some common distractions are colleagues stopping by to chat, checking email or voicemail, noise in the environment, clutter in your workplace, boredom after spending too long on one task. You can solve these by establishing open door hours, closing your doors or otherwise indicating please do not disturb, using noise cancellation headphones, setting a regular time to check voicemail and email, letting calls go to voicemail, decluttering your workspace and building in breaks. And the last part in time management is the multitasking myth. Multitasking is exactly what it sounds like, trying to do more than one thing at a time. Many of us multitask throughout our day, listening to a colleague while checking email, working on a document while talking on the phone. We have the idea that we get more done when we multitask, or that this is the best way to maximize our time. However, studies show that 30 to 40% more time is spent when you multitask rather than when you monotask, work on one thing at a time. Multitasking also means your attention is divided, which can lead to miscommunication and errors. Multitasking can also damage relationships, as it may convey that we are not really interested in what another is saying. It can be difficult to break the multitasking habit, but it is key if we are be the best we can be. Now, these are the 5 soft skills which I want to discuss in this particular part of the program. The next 5 I will discuss in the next one. Let's understand the other 5 in this particular program. Just before that, I want to talk a little bit about how soft skills are normally taken as whether it's a learned one versus a born traits. So because soft skills are talked about as a traits of a person's personality, it may seem as though you have to born with them. While some soft skills come more easily to one person than they might to another, soft skills are not inborn. Like all skills, they can be learned, because we all have our own preference and ways of moving through the world. Some soft skills may be more difficult to learn than others. But if we think back, there are also aspects of our hard skills set that were difficult at first, though they now seem to come quite natural to us. We develop soft skills in the same way we develop hard skills. We practice spending time with people who seems to be able to effortlessly demonstrate a soft skill that you find challenging is one way to build your soft skill set. Another way is to seek opportunities to practice in which the risk of failure is low until you feel confident in your ability. You don't have to be born a networker or an empathetic person. You can learn and build these skills throughout your career. Let's understand the other 5 soft skills that you would need. The 6th one is attitude and work ethic. Creating a positive attitude is one of the best things you can do for your productivity and your workplace happiness. People who have a consistently positive attitude are seen as approachable and can build more effective workplace relationships. A positive attitude also serves you well when you face challenges or setbacks. It breeds resilience. Coupled with a positive attitude, a strong work ethic helps you build strong relationships with teammates and superiors. A solid work ethic also helps you find reward in the work you do and shows a dedication not just to goals and outcomes but to your overall professional development. Few things which you need to understand when we talk about attitude and work ethics is, what are you working for? Being clear about what you are working for is a key part of building a positive attitude and a strong work ethic. If you are not sure what you are working for, it can be difficult or even impossible to fully invest in a project or in developing your skills. Take time to clarify what your personal goals are, both in terms of specific projects and in terms of your overall career. Set specific goals and then create plan to achieve them. Tie these goals to your day-to-day tasks and responsibilities so that you can keep them in sight. When working with a team, it is also vital that you outline clear group goals. Know what each member of the group is working for and what the group is collectively working for. Find ways to consistently tie individual tasks or steps to overarching group goals and to individual members' personal goals. Caring for others versus caring for self is an important aspect to it. Is there really a difference between caring for others and caring for yourself? Too often, we assume that to show care and concern for others and their needs, we have to put ourselves and our needs at the bottom of the list. We may believe that we can either practice self-care or be a good colleague and team member who demonstrates compassion for others, but that we cannot be both. However, when we come to the realization that we have shared goals with those we work with, we can find a way to both care ourselves and care for others. We may also realize that caring for ourselves is in itself a way of demonstrating care for others. That by taking good care of ourselves, we become the best colleague we can be, which demonstrates care for others. Even more, we may hold the false belief that there can be only one winner in any given situation. As a result, we may believe that we can pursue our own goals or help others pursue their goals, but never do both. Seeing the way in which everyone is interconnected and the way in which everyone's success benefits the entire group is an important attitude shift. When we can find a way to care for others and ourselves, we develop a more positive, productive workplace. The next piece is building trust. Nothing undermines productivity and morale in a workplace like lack of trust. If people don't trust you, they find it hard to work with you, invest in you, or pursue shared goals. Take the time to build trust with those you work with, and everyone will thrive. Many of the soft skills help to build trust: effective communication, openness and honesty, a positive attitude, and a strong work ethic. Continuously demonstrating that you are trustworthy helps not only to build personal relationships but also to create buy in your initiatives and projects. People who are deemed trustworthy by colleagues share some characteristics. They are skilled at their jobs, They are passionate about their work and strong work ethics. They communicate honestly and value transparency. They have others' best interest at heart. They care about people and demonstrate this. They are self-aware. Work is its own reward is something that you need to understand. One result of adopting a positive attitude and strong work ethic is that you begin to seek work as its own reward. When we operate from this standpoint, we are no longer working with others or competing tasks based on what we will gain financially or professionally from doing so. And this makes us seem more engaged and trustworthy. There is nothing wrong with valuing our salaries and other compensation. They are a vital part of why we work. However, when we take the focus off the material rewards for work and instead focus on the satisfaction we derive from the work itself, we better able to grow and thrive. A person who clearly loves what they do and considers it a reward in itself also more trustworthy, as others do not question his or her motives. If it is difficult for you to consider your work as anything other than the source of a paycheck or path of advancement, it may be time for you to consider why do the work you do. Learning to practice gratitude around your work is one way to learn to see it as its own reward. What does your work provide you in terms of satisfaction, contentment, excitement, and other non-material benefits? Are you excited to do the work you do? Why or why not? Do you feel content at the end of the day with what you have accomplished? Every day won't be a dream come true. There are always rough days. But if you can find a way to love the work you do, the majority of the time, you are on the path to greater professional and personal happiness. The seventh soft skill is adaptability or flexibility. Two of the most important skills you can have are adaptability and flexibility. Some people mistakenly think that the ability to change according to the needs of the situation or willingness to compromise shows weakness or lack of conviction. In reality, the ability to compromise, change in response to the changing situation and changing needs, and thrive are keys to success in the fast-paced workplace most of us find ourselves in. Change can be scary, but learning to adapt and flex as needed is an investment worth making. Few things which you need to understand is getting over the good old days syndrome. By that's but that's how we are always done it. Things were better back when we go on. Do you find yourself saying these things? Most of us fall prey to the good old days syndrome, where we look back at the past and believe that everything was better. This can pose a serious obstacle to our abilities to adapt to change. If we are convinced that the good old days were best, we are likely to give a new way of doing things a fair try. When you find yourself thinking back to the good old days, give yourself a reality check. Ask yourself if things were really as good as you think you remember. Most of us romanticize the past. Be honest with yourself. Try to recall obstacles, problems, or difficulties you had with the thing you are remembering as so good. And remember, there were people in good old days who were wishing for their own good old days. Changing to manage process. One of the most common situations in which we will need to change, flex, and adapt is when processes change. In order to navigate the new process and help others to do the same, we need to change not only what we do but how we approach it. New technology, globalizing business, and changing needs all leads to changes in our work processes. If we hold on to the old way of doing things, we risk reduced productivity and revenue, as well as conflict and other challenges. When we adapt to a new process, we are not just learning a new way of doing a specific task, we are demonstrating our ability to adapt to changing circumstances, learn new skills, and work with others. Managing people is not a one-size-fits-all ability. People need different things from managers. Some need lot of feedback and guidance. Other prefers to work independently most of the time and to get feedback only at regular schedules or intervals. Some people needs a great deal of hands-on training with technology or equipment, while others will come into your organization as experts. Taking the time to learn what your people need and then changing your management style to meet those needs is hugely important to workplace success. When you adapt your management style to meet the specific needs of the people you manage, this demonstrates that you care for others, that others then expecting them to conform to your preferred way of doing things. You want to invest in them and help them grow. Take the time to ask the people you manage what they need from you, what their goals are, and how you can be better manage or supervisor to them. Then take steps to make changes that you feel will be most helpful. Showing your worth, your weight in adaptability. How can you showcase your adaptability at work? Studies show that people who are highly adaptable may be more highly valued at work than those who are highly skilled but less willing to adapt, flex, or change. Take the time to show how adaptable you are, and your workplace is likely to see you as a worthwhile investment. Some ways to demonstrate adaptability on the job are: be open to alternative solutions when your first suggestion does not go over well or succeed. Be willing to take on new roles even when they are stretched for your skills. Be willing to help others generate alternative solutions or plans. Be willing to accept the unexpected. Keep your calm even when things are moving fast or are stressful. Keep calm. Demonstrate confidence in your ability and complete the job even when you have had to adapt or flex. The 8th soft skill among the 10, I would say, is self-confidence. The single greatest thing you can do for your own success is build and learn to show self-confidence. Self-confidence is not egoistic or acting like you are better than others. Self-confidence is simple, the belief that you know what to do and how to do it, that you are good at what you do, and that you can handle whatever comes your way. Demonstrate self-confidence helps to engender trust in you and demonstrates that you are skilled and adaptable. And a few confident traits. What does it mean to be confident? Studies show that confident people share many of the same traits even across cultures and industries. Cultivating those traits you already have and developing those that you do not have will build your overall self-confidence. Remember, self-confidence is about building yourself up, not tearing others down. When you're confident, you make others around you feel confident too. Some common traits of confident people include: they're not afraid to be wrong. They're willing to take stand even if they end up being wrong. They value finding out what is right more than they value being right. They listen more than they speak. They do not seek the spotlight and they share the spotlight with others. They ask for help when they need it. They think impossibilities, not obstacles. They ask, why not? Don't put others down. They aren't afraid to look silly or foolish. They acknowledge their mistakes. They seek feedback from only those who matter. They accept compliments, they walk their talk. The next piece for self-confidence is self-questionnaire. How confident are you? It can be hard to assess our own self-confidence. Taking some time to ask a few questions and answer them honestly can help you gauge the areas where your confidence is high and the areas in which you can develop greater self-confidence. Ask yourself if you agree with these statements. I intuitively know what's right for me. I walk my talk. I'm honest with others. I'm honest with myself. I feel comfortable being wrong. I am more interested in finding out what is right than being right. It is not important to me that I be right all the time. I feel like I can meet any challenge. I operate well under pressure. I do not put others down. I like to share the spotlight with others. I have a clear vision for my life. Check out these questions and see what is the answer that comes out of you. Be honest when you do this. The next piece is surefire self-confidence building tactics. Self-confidence is a trait that can be built. In fact, a few very simple tactics can help you quickly build your self-confidence. And as you become more confident, you will have experiences that will build your confidence even more. Here are surefire tips for building self-confidence. Number one, dress your best. Knowing you look good is a key to feeling good about yourself. When you know you look good, you project confidence. Take the time to choose clothes that fit well and which you feel good in. A good haircut that is easy for you to style is also a key. If you enjoy makeup, jewelry or other types of adornments, right, and pieces you love that makes you feel like a million. Stand up straight. A good posture is a quick, free way to build your confidence. Stand up straight and keep your shoulders back. Don't be afraid to take up space. A bonus of good posture is that you breathe more deeply and get more oxygen, which may mean you have more focus. Practice gratitude. Next one. When you take the time each day to practice gratitude, you see how many blessings you have in your life. This builds your confidence and appreciations for your life. Compliment others. Confident people take the time to compliment others. When you compliment others, you project that you have concern and appreciations for others. Accept compliments. When someone compliments you, accept it. Too often we say yes, but and then don't do that. Instead of just saying what it actually is, and start accepting it. Build up others. One key trait of people who have high self-confidence is that they build up others rather than tearing them down. Having self-confidence means that you do not feel competitive with others. Their success doesn't take away your own. Find ways to build up others, compliment others, acknowledge their contributions and express your gratitude. Being a mentor can also help to build others up by helping them develop skills which will help them develop their own self-confidence. The ninth one is ability to learn. No one likes criticism, but the ability to learn from it is the key to professional and personal development. Learning to accept and learning from criticism is a valuable investment in yourself. The ability to listen to and accept criticism is a key component of self-confidence. It also demonstrates that your value that others have to say and helps develop a sense that you are committed to what you do and to your own growth. Wow, you mean I'm not perfect? It can come as a shock when you get feedback that we are not as perfect as we might like to think. However, one of the hallmarks of a confident person is the willingness to recognize mistakes and accept that sometimes we are wrong. The key is to keep the focus on improvement, not on defending ourselves or on the reasons why did the thing we are being criticized for. When you accept that you are not perfect, but that imperfection doesn't mean you are a bad person, you have gained a valuable skill. Remember that no one expects you to be perfect, they just expect you to be best of you. And criticism is offered in the spirit of helping you achieve your excellence, not to make you feel bad. The next piece is listen with an open mind. Your active listening skills come in very handy when you are learning to accept and learn from criticism. It is tempting to defend ourselves when we receive criticism, but it is vital to resist this. When someone offers you feedback or criticism, listen with an open mind. You may not agree with all or any in that of what he or she has to say, but it is important to hear the person out. Reflect back what you understand the person to have said and check for understanding. Answer any questions not defensively and do not interrupt. Listen to understand, not to respond. Analyze and learn. That's the next thing you do. After someone has given you feedback or criticism, it is fine to ask for time to consider what he or she has said. Always thank the person for the feedback. Take time to analyze the feedback and decide what items you want to act on. Give yourself time, especially if you feel defensive. Even if you do not agree with everything the person said, see what you can draw out of the feedback that you can learn from. When you have analyzed the feedback, choose some action items that you can use going forward. You should then investigate training, courses, mentoring, or other ways in which you can act on the areas of feedback that you agree with or think are valid. If you have difficulty analyzing the feedback, seek out the help of a mentor, supervisor, or a trusted colleague. The next thing is clear the air and don't hold any grudges. Even when it's not meant to be, criticism and feedback can feel extremely personal. When someone gives you feedback, it's important to clear the air and not hold on to any bad feelings or grudges. Take the time to thank the person for his or her time and for caring enough to give you feedback. Affirm the relationship, especially if the criticism has been harsh or difficult to hear. Remember that when people give you feedback, they are doing so with your best interest at heart. If you find yourself feeling defensive or holding on to a negative feeling even after the feedback session, make sure to find a way to clear the air as soon as possible. This demonstrates not only that you are committed to your own growth, but that you value the relationship with the person who gave you the feedback. The 10th and the last soft skill that I was talking about that you would need is networking. Networking is more than just buzzword. Taking the time to network and build relationships is a key soft skill. Networking helps you create connections with others, which expands your circle of learning and support. Networking is more than meeting people or connecting with them on the intranet. It involves building mutually beneficial links where you can learn from and benefit from each other and the relationship. Few things to keep in mind when you work on networking is redefine needs. When many people think of networking, they think of it in terms of what they need or what they can get from the networking relationship. Networking can be more beneficial if we instead think of what we can give in our networking relationships. Think about what you have to offer people instead of only of what you need from them. When you think in terms of what you can offer as well as what you need from others, it expands your network. You begin to seek out people to whom you can offer yourselves, your expertise and talent rather than just those who have something to offer you. Seeing yourself as someone with much to offer also helps to boost your self-confidence. The next one is identifying others' interest. When you network with others, it's key to identify others' interest. This helps you identifying common interests and goals, as well as areas in which one can offer of yourself. When you meet a new person, ask about his or her goals and interests. Ask yourself how they mesh with your own goals and interest. Focusing on ways in which your goals and interests integrate with others helps create a strong, powerful network that goes beyond simple friendship. Reach out. To be able to network, you have to reach out. There are many ways to do this, both online and in person. One of the easiest ways to reach out is to join professional social networking sites such as LinkedIn and look for people in your industry or who shares your interest. Join groups both online and in person, professional groups and associations, groups which promote skills and want to develop, such as Toastmasters, and groups that work for causes. Your values are all good choices. No matter what you choose as a method of meeting people, the key part of networking is to talk to people, approach people and start a conversation, and cultivate a presence that makes you approachable. Be responsive when people contact you via email or phone. Make time in your schedule each week to work on networking. Schedule it as you would any other important task. Use your soft skills. When to back off is another important piece in networking. As important as knowing how and when to reach out is knowing when to back off. If it becomes clear that the person you are trying to connect with is not responding, it is time to move on. The last thing you want is for someone to feel pursued. Be willing to back off if a person appears to be trying to distance him or herself. Also be aware of being too self-promoting. This can be off-putting. Know that you have much to offer to others, and that someone not wanting to build a networking relationship with you is not reflection of your worth as a person. So this is those 10 soft skills that I was talking which you need.